In this video, I'm going to explain you why dismissive avoidant come back. I know it's very hard to grasp the psychology of dismissive avoidant. When you break up with a dismissive avoidant, you feel that you've never been together, you feel that they've never been in love with you, that they moved on already, that they don't really care about you suffering, about explaining why they broke up with you if they took the decision to break up. However, something you need to know is that dismissive avoidants are actually the ones very frequently getting back with the ex if, however, you do the right things, and I'll explain you what to do. Jingle.
IGetMyExBack.com. Everyone deserves a second chance.
Dating a dismissive avoidant is extremely complicated because you're with someone who is scared of commitment. They have this deep fear of commitment and deep sort of discomfort of disclosing intimacy and connecting at a deeper level. And sometimes we live with that person with the fear that our relationship has an expiry date, right? What you have to understand, and this is based on the work of John Bowlby on attachment theory, is that we all share that deep need to be attached to a primary attachment figure. So John Bowlby started his studies on children, explaining that every single child is always on needs in order to grow up to be attached to a primary attachment figure, one of his parents. With avoidant, what they tend to do is that they love at distance because they have this ability to self-soothe. So when they were children, when they were younger, they developed because of the inconsistency of how their parents will take care of them. They've learned to self-soothe whenever they had a problem, they were under stress, they were a little bit unsettled. They would self-soothe themselves and don't need any parent to reassure them or to calm them. They would have this ability to calm themselves and obviously dismiss emotions or feelings. And it's why sometimes it's really hard to connect with the dismissive avoidance because we feel like we speak a different language. Am I the one too emotional? Am I the one too dramatic when I ask this and that? And just that they don't understand. By the way, I used to be dismissive avoidant and it took me a while to understand my emotions. But there's a way to be more secure when you're avoidant. And so why did your ex break up with you? First of all, it's fear of commitment, which is deeply rooted in dismissive avoidant. They would say things like, it's going too fast for me. You've been together for 2 years, you discussed about moving in together, and for them, whoa, it's going too fast. Another thing that you could hear from dismissive avoidant is, I feel I can't make you happy. With the idea that, as you are really invested in the relationship, they don't understand how they could be so invested. And they basically conclude that they're not in love with you, or not in love to make you happy. Also the pressure from the relationship. Again, as you want to connect, as you want to develop, as you want to grow as a couple, they feel pressured, and sometimes they will say things like, it's not working for me because I don't want this, it's too complicated, like discussing about deep feelings, seeing each other every day, it's too much for me. And so what dismissive avoidant DA use, they will use what we call deactivating strategies in attachment theory to break their attachment. So we have this deep need to be connected, to be attached to someone. Dismissive avoidant, they will basically have unconsciously a sort of a scissor breaking this attachment. Here are a few common deactivating strategies. It's not bullet points, you can tick them to see whether you've seen that in your ex. They avoid physical closeness, whether sometimes people, they don't want to sleep in the same bed as their partner. Refusal to make commitment. It could be, it's not necessarily about getting married or engaged, but sometimes I used to be a bit like this. When people would tell me, like, do you want to go there on the weekend? I will really wait the last minute to sort of see if I could have any options. And it was very hard for me to commit to a plan and to say yes to that person, because I knew if I said yes to that person, I would say no to other people. Also, avoid saying I love you, obviously, because saying I love you they could perceive it as a sign of weakness, as being vulnerable, and sometimes perhaps because they haven't heard it enough from their parents, they don't really know how to use it and why they should use it, or the the meaning of it in a way. Sometimes they will sabotage things when things go well, refuse to resolve conflict. I used to be so bad at solving conflicts because when you try to discuss things, when you try to debate things, it's really about how you can listen to the other and how can you also make sure that you express. And so both of these things are difficult for avoidant. It's hard for them sometimes to listen because they can't really understand, they can't really relate. And it's hard for them to express because they can't really also understand what's going on, why they don't want to be with you on that day, whether you agreed on a plan or something. They don't really know, they just feel like it, and they just tell you, oh yeah, I just felt tired, or I just felt like I needed to be alone. But they don't necessarily know why. Focusing on small imperfections in your partner is a classic one, very common. They sort of really hype, really chasing you at the beginning, really showering you with love, sometimes love bombing you. And towards the end of the relationship, they start to pick on things like, I don't know, could be like the tone of your voice, the way you cut your fingers, the way, or I don't know, the movie you watch, or it could be like tiny things, but they will really focus on those imperfections. Another one is obviously forming relationships with people with an impossible future, so getting in relationship with people married. Could be also checking out mentally. You're speaking with them, they'll be like, they're outside, they're somewhere else, because it's hard again for them to relate, to connect with you. Keeping secrets, because when I say keeping secrets, it's also about not having to report anything, not having to depend. When you share everything, it's really about collaboration, which is something avoidants have a hard time dealing with, because as they learn to be on their own and to deal with things on their own, sharing secrets or telling about their plans or what they have to do, it would mean sort of an exchange and sort of, in a way, risking that people would be upset or disagreeing with you, and you don't want that when you're avoidant. And pinning after an ex, and this one is extremely important because we're going to use this. If you want more, I put together a course for you to know, not to know, but to learn more about attachment. And if you're anxious to be more secure, have a look in the description. You'll be able to download this list and any sort of workbooks that I've designed for you to start your reflection and learn from your experience. And if you're anxious, to learn to be more secure. So what happens after the breakup? And this is something very common for every single dumper, actually. It's the feeling of the release phase. After you make the decision to break up with someone and you're finally alone, you have this phase of release, like, finally, like this weight on my chest is gone and I can finally live my life. I'm breaking away from my prison. And then they start to reflect, right? So there's this phase of like, because it was just so much pressure, they didn't know, or sometimes people, they think for days, and how can I will announce I want to break up, which day, what would be the right time, and so on and so forth. They announce it, it's really painful, they see you suffering, it's really hard, but then they feel like, I've done it. But then they reflect. Everybody does that. It's regardless of whether you had like 30, 40 years relationship, whether you were heterosexual, homosexual, avoidant, that's always happening. It's always the same mechanism. After a breakup, we have this phase of like, finally done it, and then you reflect, always. So what do I want? That's the reflection. If you had something special, like a life-changing relationship, I call it life-changing relationship, they'll start thinking carefully about what they lost. If they are avoidant, they will start the same way as an anxious and as a secure person. They want to be happy, right? And they would wonder, how can they experience this if you're not their first partner and they've experienced different relationships? They know that what they had with you was special, and that potentially it's going to be harder to find the same connection, the same complicity, the same intimacy with someone else. So don't read their cold behavior or the fact that you feel that they don't care, that they gave up, they already moved on, they don't want to talk, they're distant. They need to reflect. The pressure of the breakup came from the pressure of commitment. It has nothing to do. With you. So that it has to do with the relationship. So again, did you have a life-changing relationship? I don't know. You'll have to assess. The clients that I have, I'm trying to rescue life-changing relationships where they would tell me we had something special. They told me we had something special because we need enough foundation. We need enough data or enough sort of in your ex is my enough willingness for them to work as well, because they need to work a little bit on their attachment, obviously. So here is what not to do. The worst thing to do is to be anxious, which is really hard, and to hear when you're anxious, because telling someone you're anxious when they're anxious makes them more anxious. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. Because sometimes it's stronger than you. Of course, you can't control anxiety. If you would, you wouldn't be anxious. I just want you to really reflect and understand that when you have that need to discuss, to connect, to explain, that's your anxiety taking the lead. Okay? And that's actually what will deactivate your ex. Okay? It's the opposite of what they want. So anytime you're about to take an action, to contact them, to speak with them, to any type of action, try to think whether it's what they want. Now that you know more about attachment, about being dismissive avoidant, you can decide. Some of my clients that I have on WhatsApp, I tell them, I know you're anxious, I know sometimes you have an urge, the same way you sometimes have an urge to smoke, they have an urge to contact their ex. I tell them, it depends on whether they should stay in no contact or whether they're in touch with their ex. But send him to me, send that message to me, and I'll tell you. And very often, by sending that message to me, first they diffuse that urge, but also they can reflect with me, and we can discuss like, what were you trying to do? What were you trying to get from your ex? So it's very important for you to find ways to manage that anxiety and not project it to your ex. Whether it's with a therapist, a counselor, someone like myself, whether it's with a friend, whether it's as part of a community, but it's very important, or if you do it on your own, read about anxiety and how you can manage it. It's very important for you to bring that awareness. Because when you're anxious and you act out of anxiety, this is what makes things worse. And sometimes I have people calling me, and it's a bit too late because they've done so much damage after the breakup, it's really hard to recover. So distance is what they want. As soon as you create some space, avoidant will feel safe. Because what they're scared of is like that commitment, is that closeness. And so they would switch from the flows we discussed about, like how they can only focus on the flows in the relationship, to the ideal you. Because what they didn't like about the relationship was the relationship, but that's nothing to do with you. And so when they don't have this fear of intimacy, this fear of, or the pressure from the closeness, they start to idealize you, to see you in another way, to be nostalgic of the moments you had together. Remember, we're talking about life-changing relationship. They were happy with you. I have no doubt about that. It's not because they were avoidant that they can't be happy in a relationship. As we discussed, everybody needs to be attached to someone. What they are doing, they are just going against Mother Nature. So some anxious behavior will push them away. And I've listed some what we call protest behaviors because they can be dramatic if you want to get back with your ex. The protest behavior. So spamming your partner's phone. It sounds obvious, it sounds logical, but people tell me like so many times, okay, I tell them go no contact, okay. Then they call me 3 days after, okay, can I send them a message? Like, no, we said no contact for a month. Okay, then I have another call with them, we discuss other things, and at the end of the call they will tell me, can I send them a message? So it's really important for you, and I know I'm not making fun because I've been in that situation where you know it's bad, but you still do it. So that's why it's also good to have a sparring partner, someone like me or anyone, to make you reflect and see like, okay, hold on. You're not thinking with the right part of your brain. You need to think more with the analytical part of the brain, because what you're doing is actually pushing your ex away. Another type of, so few protest behaviors, and again, it's something that I discuss in more detail in the course and that you can access in the link in the description. You give your partner the cold shoulder, keeping score, which is a huge one, because when we are after a breakup, we tend to feel like, yeah, but you've done this and that and that and that. And so we sort of project this to our partner. That's the worst thing that you can do. Acting hostile, manipulate, and jealousy. And manipulate is like, okay, but if I do this, it's going to react this. Again, that's feeding as well your anxiety when you act like this. Whatever you do it for you. Okay? Right now, the process is for you to get more secure. By being more secure, you will increase, you will sort of attract your ex, your dismissive avoidant, to be more secure. You will inspire him or her to be more secure. It's the only way that works. Anything else won't work. So when using the above to make your partner react, you're actually creating more harm than good. Sometimes it feels like you want to do it, it feels like it's a great idea, and you will sort of reaffirm or try to find ways that make sense. You know it's bad. Deep inside, you know it's bad. Quick one. So it's expected that at some point avoidants will feel the need to reclaim their freedom. So when you're dating an avoidant, yes, you're walking on eggshells because they always have this unconscious need for their freedom. So it's really about how you can connect and communicate that with your partner. So why it's so important to know attachment is that you know what will activate and deactivate them. You know what will activate your protest behaviors, and you know also what will be deactivating them. It's also by starting to be more secure that you will attract your ex, and that you will build a stronger relationship. Studies have shown consistently the best relationships are the ones where one of the partner is secure. If it's two, it's the same, so one partner needs to be secure. But the thing is, theory is great, you're watching my videos, it makes sense, you're reading books. Now it's really about how you can apply it, how you can change your communication, how you can change your mental state, your psyche about this. Really about, that's why I think, of course I'm into coaching, but that's why I think it's really important for you to understand whether whatever you're learning, whatever you're reading, you're applying it, and whether you see any change in your life, in your behaviors, in how you see things. If you don't see any change, your ex won't see any change, and you will never get back with him or her. Last but not least, being avoidant doesn't mean they don't give up on you. Again, they want to be happy. It's just a question of finding the way to connect with them, to find a structure that works for both of you. And if you're secure, they will be attracted with this relationship, and they would want to build something with you and potentially commit with you. Any question, if it doesn't make sense, if you want to connect, if you have questions about your specific case, let me know. There's a link to have a call with me, to get a call with me. If it helped you, don't hesitate to like, or please like. You can also subscribe and share this video to anyone you feel would need to know more about attachment. Take care, bye.
Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer.